Right now is a pretty interesting time for Cyberpunk 2077. We're approaching a 2-week mark from when that recent delay went live, and even though this technically means we're only 1 week away from exactly where we were before the delay, hype is still definitely remaining around a minimum. People just in general don't seem nearly as hyped as they were previously. Posts around speculation or even just in general excitement are definitely way less frequent on the subreddit, and posts criticizing CD Projekt are definitely getting a lot more attention now. So in this video, I want to talk about all of that. Go over some of the recent rumors or even leaks that another delay may be on the horizon for Cyberpunk 2077 and the response from CD Projekt to those rumors, and actually kind of the hilarious backstory to the rumor itself. Even further, we got further details around the nature of the delay as well as interviews from developers that do give us insight into the game itself and what exactly we can expect from it. With that said, if you guys want to support the channel or keep up to date with Cyberpunk 2077, you can get subscribed. Hypothetically, we are in the final stretch yet again, under 30 days until we could play this game for ourselves. But otherwise, let's first take a look at some interesting news that came out in the wake of the recent delay. One thing I first want to comment on was this news that CD Projekt's stock dropped 25% following the news of the delay, that being a drop of 25% over a 2-month period from August. There are a lot of articles posting this and then reposting this story, and I think it actually is inherently misleading in that the entire stock exchange that this stock is hosted on actually saw a decline of 18% during the same period. So yes, the stock of CD Projekt definitely dropped as a result of these delays. The entire stock market is down quite significantly in a relatively short amount of time. There are without a doubt some macro factors here. The delays didn't help things and definitely contributed to that 7% decline beyond the market, but I don't think it's as big of news as some of these articles are making it out to be. And speaking of bad games journalism, another thing we recently saw was how an established leaker may hint that another Cyberpunk 2077 delay was coming. There were several articles posted around this, and it actually ended up becoming quite a big story. The established leaker in question being Hot Girl Video 69, and no, I'm not joking, who did post, so what if Cyberpunk 2077 gets delayed again? Like, what if it doesn't launch this year? Like, until 2021, just asking. This actually got way more traction than it probably deserves to, but more or less the backstory on this one is, this Twitter account has actually posted several leaks in the past, claiming to be somebody working in the adult industry who has several clients in the video game industry and thus gets information as a result of that. The reason they're described as an established leaker is they predicted E3 would get delayed 6 days beforehand, which, to put that into perspective, they predicted a giant gathering of over 70,000 people typically wouldn't be happening at the same time a worldwide pandemic was shutting down several countries and coming into the United States. So yeah, although technically a correct prediction, that really isn't that crazy of a prediction. And if you look at some of the other leaks posted and subsequently deleted by this account, they were actually totally wrong, like a subsequent trailer for Breath of the Wild or even some more Metroid news. Needless to say, despite how much attention some of these articles and this tweet itself actually got, it is fairly unfounded, or at least it is if you just look at this tweet alone. I think one of the reasons this actually got quite a bit of additional attention is it kind of made sense based off what's been going on with CD Projekt. About 2 weeks ago, we saw them delay Cyberpunk 2077 by 3 weeks. And in that time, it's basically been radio silence from the company on Twitter. They did make one tweet following the delay news, and they have liked tweets or retweeted other things, actually doing a few minor responses to various tweets here or there. But as far as updates on the game or even teaser images posted on Twitter, we haven't gotten any of that in nearly 2 weeks now, which is somewhat alarming considering how frequently it was going on previously. There's actually a rumor also that the release date was removed from the profile following the delay, that it at one point said it was coming out on December 10th, but at one point was removed, making it seem like another delay was imminent. But that too is just totally unfounded. The release date of December 10th was never on the profile and was actually only just added to the banner image a couple of days ago now. Either way, following this rumor getting some traction, we actually got an official response from CD Projekt, which is kind of hilarious in that a random Twitter user named Hot Girl Video 69 actually got a response out of CD Projekt on whether the game was going to get delayed again. Not directly, but from a ton of articles coming out about this. And what they said to IGN was that, as a rule, we don't comment on rumors or speculation, but I will confirm we were just taking time to update all of our assets to reflect the new launch date of December 10th, which seems to, in one way or another, confirm or reaffirm that yes, the game is still coming out on December 10th. And it actually is true. There have been many pictures posted of not only this banner image, but also advertisements in the real world. Many of these now updated to reflect the new December 10th release date instead of the previous November one, although this hasn't honestly done that much to quell fans, and I feel like it's almost a boy who cried wolf situation. Just before the last delay went live, the social media accounts of CD Projekt were affirming people that yes, it's still coming out November 19th. It was mentioned numerous times there would be no more delays past November 19th. Then of course another delay ended up happening. So it definitely feels like the community overall, who previously would have flocked to an answer like this, is taking it more so with a grain of salt now. Some do feel reassured by it, but others kind of feel the exact same way. It still is somewhat suspicious or mysterious how there's just been radio silence on their Twitter, especially considering it still is only 30 days away. This hypothetically should be when the heavy marketing does begin and we really start seeing that push for Cyberpunk media. As far as my own take on this one, I don't think we see another big delay like we did previously of everything getting pushed to next year. The stock would see a huge hit if it moves to Q1 2020 as far as a release date goes and out of Q4. They'd miss out on the big push for people buying this as a gift for the holidays, but I for one wouldn't be shocked if something changes. I wouldn't be shocked if either some features are cut from the current gen version we heard in the past, and we'll talk a bit more about how the big reason for the delay was issues around the current gen version of the game. Next gen and the PC versions are reportedly working fine, so I could see features cut there, even a delay of the current gen version, but not a delay of the next gen and PC version. CD Projekt has remained pretty adamant that this is something they don't plan on doing, and that's what they said in a conference call they had a couple of weeks ago, which we'll talk more about in a moment, but I think something like that would be way more likely than a comprehensive delay pushing everything back into next year. Either way, that's all we know as of right now. Technically, we are only 29 days away from the release of this game, so I imagine one way or another soon we'll hear something, whether it be the announcement of Night City Wire 4, which is still coming apparently at some point, and even console gameplay is something we're supposed to see at some point also, or even just some more teaser images on Twitter. But a lot more insight can be gained around this from the recent call they held with investors following the initial delay we got a couple of weeks ago now. I'll briefly go over this because I think it is a good reminder as to where things hypothetically stand, although do remember this is a couple of weeks old. They iterate how the game is ready for next gen and literally certified by both Sony and Microsoft for release, and that of course includes the PC version. And although this may not mean much, the confidence in their release date is now greater than it was before. So they're more confident in this December 10th release than they were in the November 19th release. This large in part because right now they have a game and they could actually play it. They could see where exactly it stands. One quote that's getting taken way out of context from this is the quote on, "We feel, maybe not comfortable, chuckle, but confident we are releasing on the 10th. A lot of people are taking this as they don't feel comfortable releasing on the 10th, but they're somewhat confident they're releasing on the 10th, meaning they're not comfortable with that 10th release date and we could almost certainly see another delay, but I think that's the wrong interpretation of that. What I think they mean here, and what's kind of backed up by the context, is that they're saying they're not comfortable with the release date in that they've gotten a ton of backlash. They know they've let people down. They literally are getting death threats. It's uncomfortable the situation they're in, but they are still very confident they'll be able to release by that date. On the topic of crunch, they mention how a large part of the team isn't crunching at all because they've already finished their work on the game. One quote that could be a bit more concerning is actually one question asked where it says, okay, so basically we can be comfortable now that the game is definitely coming out on December 10th. Is that what you're saying? And the response we got was not exactly confidence inspiring that that's more or less what I'm saying, I guess, yes. Although that's the only instance of not showing confidence in that release date, so I'm gonna say that's the outlier, not all of the other ones. One of the other interesting quotes we get is around the next gen version, where they basically describe that the next gen version of the game is really doable thanks to backwards compatibility. What we are releasing now is the current gen version, which can be played on next gen consoles thanks to backwards compatibility, but without next gen specific features. Expanding on that with, next year we will be releasing a full-blown next gen version, perhaps not optimized for next gen, but with next gen features implemented. So I found this pretty interesting because I do wonder if what they're referring to here are next gen features like quick resume on the console, or next gen features in that the game will actually have additional features. I'm going to assume, and I think the safe bet is that they mean some of those console specific features, but in general, I think it's an interesting quote. I know I for one didn't realize this was made possible thanks to backwards compatibility, but hypothetically, considering there's way better hardware underneath it, it should still run notably better. But large in part, that's what we got from the call. There's quite a few other details in there, but many minor and now a bit old. But overall, that's where we stand right now as far as the delay talks do go. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you think there's going to be another delay? Do you think they'll have a segmented release, even though being adamant that's not something they had planned to do? But then transitioning into some new details and interviews around Cyberpunk, we recently learned that Gabe Amatangelo, which I almost certainly butchered, is the creative director working on Cyberpunk multiplayer, and he seemingly has been active in this role since the beginning of 2020. And we actually actually heard from that recent call that they already have internal tests of the multiplayer working. And before people start getting frustrated that this could be a reason for the delay or why they're developers on this, it's actually a totally separate team and it has been for a long time now. They are literally housed in a different studio within CD Projekt, so it's not like they're borrowing developers to work on multiplayer. And also, they said the release date of this should not be expected before 2022. It's still very far away. But either way, this new hire as the creative director, of course, is a pretty big role. Despite that, his resume is actually kind of interesting. He originally worked on several movies, but then shifted over to development and seemed to have helped to design the PvP in Star Wars The Old Republic, an MMO from EA. The PvP or multiplayer features in that not exactly being critically acclaimed. And then he went on to work on a multiplayer game that ended up getting canceled, basically a 4v1 game similar to Evolve. So I imagine we're still years away from even seeing anything around this multiplayer mode, but this is a pretty big milestone and a position being filled. Then a couple of interviews that recently went live. We recently heard from the principal gameplay animator. This being an interview conducted in Italian, but in a translation was posted up on the Cyberpunk subreddit by the username MasterDrake97. In this we hear about a few things. Firstly, how Mike Pondsmith, the original creator of Cyberpunk, was actually very active in the pre-production development of Cyberpunk 2077. He also talks a bit about using motion capture with the development of this game. And when doing motion capture, they actually used references that would fit the actors. So for example, for the nomads and those conducting that mocap, they would actually look at Mad Max. For corpos, they would look at some Japanese Yakuza movies. The first person animations in this game will be referencing some of the motion capture, but most of it is done by hand. And even when motion capture is used with other NPCs, a lot of it is still edited by hand by an animator. When it comes to combat, he describes how headshotting an enemy that is a much higher level than you may not necessarily one-shot them. This being because it is an action-adventure RPG and trying to find the right balance there, but a headshot will still trigger some kind of reaction, like them falling and then having to get back up. And it's not like all of these enemies are just giant bullet sponges. But then a few other interesting quotes we got from a separate interview with the senior quest designer, a point we've heard a couple of times, but if you've missed it, it gets me really excited for this game. The way you handle quests or some side content can drastically change what the main story looks like in the end. And the story overall is going to be a personal one. The focus of Cyberpunk 2077 is not saving the world, but around V themselves. And you can actually outright ignore the main quest in this and just treat it like a sandbox world. Go exploring, go do some side quests, try and progress or upgrade some of your skills, which for me at least, that is exactly what I love doing in games. And I'm really excited to get to experience it here. Night City looks awesome. Like there's a lot to explore and uncover here. Definitely seems like one of those games you could spend many hours playing without actually progressing the story or really doing any quests at all. And then finally, a couple of other things I just want to highlight are jokes and not real, because I think there's been some confusion around this. This tweet around the US election isn't actually real. It definitely is funny, but I saw several responses to this on various social media platforms thinking this was actually tweeted or talking about giving the person who tweeted this a raise as far as the community management team goes. And also, this product is not real, at least yet, despite CD Projekt teasing several projects in collaboration with Cyberpunk as of late. This is not a genuine one, but otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you found it informative. Hopefully you now feel up to date with everything Cyberpunk 2077 that has been happening. But until next time, I thank you all again for watching, and I hope to see you all later.